You know that specific kind of rage you get when you're reading the news? You're following a story, maybe it's a new rail line or a huge plan for health records or a school building program, and then just poof, it's gone.
Cancelled. Paused. Under review.
Exactly. It feels like we are just stuck in this loop where a new government comes in or, I mean, honestly, just a new minister walks into the office and they immediately hit the reset button.
Right.
The education reform gets scrapped, the climate target gets renamed, the transport plan is shelved. It feels like we are perpetually living in year one of a 10-year plan. And the question I find myself screaming at the radio is just why can't they stick to the plan?
It is a universal frustration. I think everyone, no matter where they sit on the political spectrum, has felt that whiplash. And usually when we feel that, we reach for the simplest explanation. We blame the people. We look at other countries, places that seem to build energy grids without a meltdown or, maintain a consistent industrial strategy for 20 years. And we think, well, they must just have better politicians.
Oh, I am 100% guilty of that. It's the grown-up-in-the-room theory.
Yeah.
We look at Germany or Scandinavia and think, oh, they're just naturally efficient, or their culture is just more sensible. We assume we're structurally messy, and they have some kind of cultural secret sauce.
But here is where the research we're diving into today just pulls the rug out from under us. That explanation, the better people or nicer culture theory, it collapses almost immediately when you actually look at the data.
Really? Because it feels so intuitively true. It feels like a temperament thing.
It feels true, but think about the pressures for a second. Politicians are politicians everywhere. They're ambitious. They're worried about polling. They want to be liked. I mean, the media pressure in Berlin or Wellington or Stockholm is just as intense as it is here.
Right, the crises are global.
Exactly. Inflation, pandemics, geopolitical instability, they don't respect borders. So if everyone is sailing into the same storm, but some boats stay on course while others capsize, it's probably not because some captains are just nicer people.
It's the design of the boat.
Exactly. It is a design problem. And that is our mission for this deep dive. We're taking the focus off who governs, the personalities, the drama, the scandals, and we're looking at how the machinery of government is built.
Okay.
We want to figure out why long-term thinking is survivable in some systems and basically a career-ending risk in others.
I like that word, survivable. It implies that right now, in our system, thinking long-term is actually dangerous for a politician. Like it's a hazard.
In many systems, yes, it's an act of heroic self-sacrifice. And if your system relies on politicians being heroes every single day, you have a bad system. Heroes are rare.
Yeah.
We need to look at how you build a machine where doing the right thing, the long-term thing, is the safe bet.
Okay, but I have to play devil's advocate here immediately. Making long-term thinking safe sounds... Well, it sounds a lot like ignoring the voters. If I'm a politician, shouldn't I be worried about losing my job if I don't deliver quick wins? Isn't responsiveness the whole point of democracy? If the people want to change, they should get a change.
That is the core tension, and the sources are really careful here. Making long-term thinking safe doesn't mean removing accountability. It doesn't mean politicians get to become, technocratic dictators who ignore the public for 30 years. It's not about removing the ability to change. It's about the cost of change.
So what does that mean practically?
It's about the balance between friction and momentum.
Okay, break that down. Friction and momentum. Because usually when we talk about government, friction is the enemy. We want things to be smooth.
In delivery, yes. But in strategy, friction can be a feature. Think about it like physics. In a lot of struggling systems, and the UK is often highlighted here as a prime example, changing direction is incredibly easy. It looks like action. A new minister walks in, scraps a policy, announces a new initiative. That's low friction. But staying the course, that's high friction. If you stick to a plan that isn't showing results yet, you look inactive. You get hammered in the press for dithering.
So the path of least resistance is to flip-flop. It's easier to launch a new rocket than to keep fueling the old one.
Precisely. The design goal of these high-functioning systems is to invert that physics. You want a system where changing direction creates friction. It's hard work, it requires explanation, it costs political capital, while continuity creates momentum.
So if I want to scrap a plan, I have to sweat for it. But if I want to keep it going, that should be the easy path.
That's it. We need to stop relying on political courage and start relying on political engineering. Long-term thinking shouldn't be brave. It should just be a defensible position.
All right, I'm sold on the theory. I like the physics analogy. But I need to see the blueprints. Because right now, this sounds a bit abstract. Who is actually doing this? And don't tell me it's just because they have a consensus culture.
It is definitely not just culture. Let's look at Germany. Now, Germany has plenty of drama. They have messy coalitions, they have arguments, scandals,
Sure.
but they do something very subtle with their institutions to create that friction we talked about.
So what's the mechanism?
It starts with the coalition contract.
We have manifestos here. We have party platforms. How is that different?
It's very different. In many systems, a manifesto is a wish list. It's marketing. In Germany, when parties form a government, they spend weeks, sometimes months, negotiating a detailed line-by-line contract.
Wow.
It specifies exactly what legislation will happen and when. I mean, it's hundreds of pages long.
So once the government starts, the roadmap is already locked in.
Largely, yes. And they have these federal-state coordination committees that persist even when the federal minister changes. So let's say you're a new minister coming in. You could change the plan. You could decide to scrap the energy transition targets because you want to make a splash.
But I'd have to get through the contract first.
You'd have to untangle the coalition deal, which risks collapsing the government. You'd have to explain it to the states who have already budgeted for the old plan. You'd have to get buy-in from committees that have been there longer than you have. The friction is incredibly high.
I see. So the lazy politician or the one who just wants a quiet life just sticks to the plan.
Exactly. Continuity isn't automatic, but it's the default setting. The system protects the plan from the whim of a single person. You can still change it if it's a disaster, but you can't change it just because you're bored or want a headline.
That makes sense for Germany. It's a big federal machine. But what about smaller places? I feel like the counter-argument is always, oh, New Zealand or the Nordics, they can plan because everyone knows everyone, they're small.
Size is often used as a dismissal. You're right. People say it works because it's a village, but the sources make a fascinating point here. Scale cuts both ways.
How so? I would have thought small means stable.
Not necessarily. Small countries can be incredibly volatile. New Zealand has a very intense media environment. It's small, feedback is fast, personalities are huge. If anything, the pressure to react to every single headline should be higher than in a big, sluggish country.
So how do they stop the flip-flopping if the pressure is even higher?
They deliberately strengthened institutions to slow decision-making down.
Slow it down. Usually every consultant on Earth says government needs to be faster and more agile.
You want agility in delivery, but you want stability in strategy. You want to slow down reversal of strategy. New Zealand uses things like independent fiscal oversight and very explicit well-being and outcome frameworks.
Well-being framework sounds a bit fluffy, to be honest. Is that just a mission statement saying we want people to be happy?
It sounds fluffy, but in practice, it's hard-edged. It's written down and measured. It creates what the experts call constraint politics.
Constraint politics, that sounds limiting. Like handcuffs.
It is, but in a good way. It changes the argument the opposition can make. Instead of every new government coming in and asking, should this program exist, let's debate its entire philosophy, the question becomes, are we meeting the agreed metric for this program?
I see the difference.
Yeah.
The first question invites you to burn it down.
Right.
The second question forces you to fix it or optimize it.
Exactly. It anchors the debate. And you see a similar thing in Sweden. People call it consensual culture, but the source material argues it's really just institutional memory with teeth.
What kind of teeth?
Administrative separation. This is a big one. In Sweden, the government ministries are actually quite small. They set the policy direction. But the agencies that deliver the policy, the ones building the roads or running the health programs, are large, powerful, and distinct.
So the minister isn't the CEO of the agency?
No. And that is a crucial distinction. In the UK model, the minister is technically responsible for everything. In Sweden, there's a legal separation. A minister cannot just call up the head of an agency on a Tuesday and say, cancel that bridge, I need the money for a tax cut headline.
It's illegal.
It's constitutionally very difficult. It's called ministerial rule, and it's generally forbidden. To change the bridge, the minister has to change the legislation or the formal instruction to the agency, which takes time and process.
Again, friction?
Friction against impulse, high cost to change. So plans don't belong to a single person. They don't die just because that person moves on.
Plans don't belong to a single person. That feels like the key takeaway there. Because if we look at the UK or similar systems, well, let's talk about the contrast, because the source material highlights what it calls the risk of persistence.
This is where it gets really interesting and honestly a bit worrying regarding the incentives we've created. In the systems we're critiquing, like the UK roles rotate very quickly, ministers move departments constantly, and responsibility is hyper-personalized.
It's the if you break it, you bought it rule.
But on steroids, imagine you are a minister. You have two choices. Choice A. You stay the course on a difficult long-term plan that your predecessor started 3 years ago. It's messy, it's over budget, and it won't show results for another 5 years.
And I might not even be in the job in 5 years.
Exactly. You probably won't be. But if it falters tomorrow while you are sitting in the chair, your name is on the failure. You own the risk, but you have no guarantee of the reward.
Okay, so that's a bad bet for me personally. What's choice B?
Choice B. You change direction, you launch a new initiative, you scrap the old failing plan.
Well, that looks like action. I look decisive. I look like a new broom sweeping clean.
And crucially, you can blame the chaos on the mess you inherited. You buy yourself a grace period, even if changing direction is objectively the wrong thing to do for the country. For you, personally, it is the safer political bet.
It's an asymmetry. Persistence is risky. Change looks like leadership.
And this shapes behavior long before we even see the outcomes. Politicians aren't stupid. They anticipate this risk.
Yeah.
They know that sticking to a predecessor's plan is a liability, so the system practically screams at them, start over, make it yours.
So naturally, people try to fix this. And usually, the fix that gets thrown around, I hear this all the time, is let's just take the politicians out of it. You know, give it to the experts, the arm's-length body.
The technocratic dream.
Right. Let's set up an independent commission for infrastructure or an independent board for the NHS. It sounds logical. If the politicians are the problem, put the decision at arm's length. But the source material suggests this hasn't really worked out as planned. In fact, it might have made things worse.
It's complicated, but yes, in many cases it has backfired. And it's important to understand why, because the intent was good. The theory is Parliament sets the direction, gives the job to an arm's-length body in ALB and says, you run this day-to-day, we won't rewrite the rules every time there's a bad headline.
That's the deal. Insulation. We pay you to be the heat shield.
But the reality is that insulation has degraded. These bodies were meant to be continuity machines. They were supposed to carry the plan forward when the minister changed, but instead they turned into shock absorbers.
Shock absorbers. That doesn't sound like a leadership role. That sounds like something you hit when you drive into a pothole.
That's exactly what they became. Instead of protecting the plan from politics, the bodies became a place to dump the bad politics. When a plan gets controversial, the minister washes their hands and says, oh, that's the independent body's decision. Don't look at me.
And when things go well?
Oh, when things go well, the minister is front and center cutting the ribbon.
Of course.
But here's the real dysfunction. It creates a political yo-yo. A government will delegate power to an ALB to buy stability. Look, we're serious. We're handing this over. But then the moment they feel like they're losing visibility or they need a quick win to boost polling,
they tighten the leash.
They tighten the leash, they issue new guidance, they change the mandate, or they just bypass the body entirely. So you get this push-pull dynamic. You have an expert body trying to plan for 20 years, but their budget and mandate gets tweaked every 18 months by a nervous minister.
So it waters down the whole point. You have the bureaucracy of an independent body, but without the actual independence.
Exactly. Delegation stops being a solution to short-termism and just becomes a coping mechanism. It's a way to hide the dirty laundry, not wash it. It's moving the pressure, not solving it.
That's a great line. And it brings us to a really uncomfortable place, because we've talked about systems and mechanisms and institutions, but ultimately this is about people. And the source material raises a point here that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. It asks, who does this system attract?
This is the critical question. We talk about policy outcomes, bad trains, expensive housing, failing utilities, but we rarely talk about the human pipeline.
The talent pool.
Right. If you design a system where success requires constant visibility, where sticking to a plan is punished, and where everything you do might be scrapped in 18 months because of a cabinet reshuffle, who applies for that job?
People who like the game. People who are good at the quick win, the soundbite, the flashy announcement.
It attracts people who thrive on that adrenaline and that specific kind of short-term combat. But think about the inverse. Who looks at that environment, looks at that meat grinder of short-termism and decides, you know what, this isn't built for serious work. I'm not going to stand for office.
That's the scary part.
Yeah.
We might be filtering out the very people we need. The engineers, the planners, the people who understand complexity, the people who want to build something that takes 10 years to finish.
We are effectively putting up a sign that says, serious planners need not apply. And then we act surprised when we don't have serious plans.
It really reframes the whole "why are politicians like this" complaint. We created a habitat that selects for a specific species, and then we complain that we don't see any other animals.
That's it. We are selecting for sprinters in a marathon world. And the cost isn't just wasted money on canceled projects, although that is in the billions. The cost is a loss of talent. We are losing the people who could actually solve these long-term problems because we haven't fixed the design of the room they have to work in.
So what does this all mean for us listening to this? It's easy to feel a bit cynical, like, oh, great, the system is broken and we're doomed.
Yeah.
But I think there's a hopeful angle here, too. It means this isn't a mystery.
No, it's not magic. And it's not about waiting for a hero leader to come along and save us. That's the most important takeaway. Long-term thinking isn't a moral virtue that you either have or you don't. It is a design choice.
It's engineering.
It is political engineering. We know it's possible because other countries are doing it. They aren't smarter than us. They aren't better people. They just use friction. They use constraints. They build institutional memory with teeth. They make continuity safer than reversal.
So next time we see a policy U-turn or a big project get scrapped, instead of just shouting at the TV.
Instead of shouting, "Who broke this?" we should be looking at the mechanism. We should be asking, where were the teeth? Where was the friction? Why was it so easy to cancel this?
And as we wrap up, there's one final thought from the source material that I want to leave everyone with. It's a question that really sticks. We often ask, why did this policy fail? But the source suggests the better, deeper question is this: what kind of person is this system designed to survive?
And equally, who are we losing because we haven't fixed the design?
Exactly. It really changes how you read the news, doesn't it? I'm going to be looking for those institutional teeth everywhere now.
Me too. It's less about the headlines, more about the fine print.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll catch you on the next one.
See you then.